2, 1.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Young, and I am the Community Prevention Specialist in Carbon County. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn series, Carbon County Conversations, Classroom to the Community. And this month is, April is Alcohol Awareness Month, so we thought we would just do a brief little presentation on some data here in Carbon County, and then also just some alcohol facts on how it affects the brain, how it affects the body, and then provide some resources. And so if you have questions, please I'll try to check. I'll have Janet maybe check the chat for me as we move forward. It's a pretty short presentation, but if you have any questions, I would love to hear those. So alcohol, the facts. So these are our Carbon County, some of our Carbon County numbers. Not all of the consequences around alcohol did I include. One of the cool things that I see is, so over on the where it says high school, these are our high school numbers from our prevention needs assessment, and that's a Wyoming survey that's done in the high schools, the even years in the spring, and this is 2022 data. And these are some of the numbers that just stood out. And honestly, our youth and alcohol is much less of a concern than it was even 5 years ago. Youth just aren't using alcohol at the rate, which is a good thing. But lifetime use, 17% of our high schoolers say that they have used on several occasions in their lifetime. 30-day use, 14% on 1 or 2 times in the last 30 days. Binge drinking, which is 5 or more drinks in a day, in a setting is actually how they put it, is 5%. And then they attended an event where adults were drunk or intoxicated. That leads us to our adult conversation. So you say 63% of the events that they attend there's drunk or intoxicated adults. And they don't specify event. They do, in the survey, it does say community events. And so, I've had people ask, well, does that count as a wedding or a family wedding? Or we're really, in that survey, they do ask community events, but they don't specify what kind of event in the community. So those are some of our youth consequences. I didn't put in like our middle school age groups because those numbers were even lower. So that's a good thing, but there's still, obviously there's still work to do. And then when we talk about other consequences, DUI is a very obvious consequence of alcohol use. And so alcohol-related arrests, 36% of the arrests in Carbon County, and that includes all law enforcement agencies. This is a survey done by the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. WASCOP is what they're called. They do the survey every year. They get all of the arrest data from every law enforcement agency within a county, and then they put it all together. That is one of the resources I have at the end. So if you ever want to look at the survey yourself, I'll provide those resources to you. So alcohol-related arrests, so 36% of all arrests are alcohol-related in Carbon County. That can be property damage, DUI arrest, which you'll see below, assault, public intox. Those are a lot of them. A lot of them are like property damage, and especially if people are walking home from the bars, things like that. So it can be about anything, but it just means that they had a BAC that was above the legal limit, or a BAC at all at the time of arrest is really what that means. Our DUI arrests, so there was 369 arrests last year in Carbon County in 2023. So 369 DUI arrests in all of Carbon County. And the average BAC of those DUIs was 0.181. The legal limit is 0.08. So that gives you an idea. It's twice the legal limit. So most BACs, when they get pulled over, are pretty high. And then we did have 131 underage DUI arrests in Carbon County in 2023. So this is really the consequences. This is the best data that we've got available to us. I'm sure there's other data sources that we could be looking at, but this is all specific to Wyoming. Impaired driving or driving under the influence. I did include this. This comes straight from the DUI or CDC, and they kind of pull some different facts, but I liked some of the, and this is from 2008 to 2018. So it's not as new as the data I just showed you, but I thought it was interesting to kind of show you at a national level what agencies are looking at and what they see when they look at Wyoming. So it talks about keeping safe. There's fast facts. And I can share this resource with you as well. It's a 2-page resource that the CDC puts out every few years around every single state. So you can see the sobering facts around alcohol impaired driving across the country. And this one is just, you can see male, female rates, and you can see percentage of adults who report driving after drinking too much. So even some of that data. And it shows, it's kind of comparing us to the national numbers as well. We typically have higher alcohol rates than the rest of the country. That's always been the norm. Wyoming tends to like their alcohol. And so these are just some very simple facts. And again, I can share these with you. And again, I wanted this presentation to be brief and also let the audience know what these resources are and where we get our data and how we look at alcohol. And when I say we, I'm talking about prevention in Wyoming and the people that are working around substance abuse and suicide prevention. These are the things that we are looking at when we are trying to make decisions for a community. And this is another one. I keep touching my computer. So this is the second page, and this talks a little bit about strategies. And in Wyoming, it talks about our, we do not have sobriety checkpoints. The legal limit is 0.08, which it's 0.08 everywhere. There are some states that are talking about going to a 0.05 when it comes to alcohol limit, but we are 0.08. Sobriety checkpoints are best practice across the country. Here, our statute makes it so that it is illegal to have actual checkpoints, and so we do not do checkpoints. There are things that we do in a lot of our communities across Wyoming that we advertise high visibility, just police being in visible places across the community. So, for instance, in Laramie, when on game days, they always advertise that there's a lot of law enforcement out, don't drink and drive, things like that. A lot of communities do that around community festivals. They just let you know that there is law enforcement out there. They are looking for impaired drivers. It is a good deterrent. It tends to work, especially if you have alternative transportation in a community. So ignition interlocks are for repeat offenders in Wyoming. So we do have ignition interlocks. I don't know that every single county does, but there is a handful of counties that is just part of what they do. Some of the other things, like I said, alternative transportation, and just high visibility saturation patrols. That was the word I couldn't find. And then some programs like 24/7. That is one that is in most communities in Wyoming, and that is if you've had a DUI, you have to. You can get less fine. You can not go to jail. Some of those things if you go to a law enforcement agency and breathe into a PBT twice a day. And so it's proven to show recidivism, and you do it for a certain amount of times, whatever your sentence is from the judge. So there's programs like that. There's alcohol courts across Wyoming. So there's lots of strategies. The biggest or the best thing that we can do is prevention and just having these kind of conversations around alcohol and what impaired driving is. I don't want to get into this is about alcohol today, but a lot of our DUIs in Wyoming are also they're also drug involved, and so a lot of times somebody will get pulled over because suspected of drinking and driving or driving under the influence, and then drugs are found, or drugs are in their system. And we do have drug recognition experts in Wyoming. Most of our law enforcement agencies have a handful of those. And those are officers that are specially trained to be able to tell from the way you're acting, from behavior, from the way your eyes look, things like that, if there's other things on board besides alcohol. So that is another strategy that we do use across Wyoming. Like I said, most of our agencies do have drug recognition experts within their departments. And so I talked about blood alcohol content. So alcohol enters the bloodstream through the stomach. In general, the liver can process up to an ounce of alcohol every hour. So that's something to keep in mind as I kind of show you the next couple of charts. The effects of alcohol come from its presence in the blood and body tissues. Alcohol can be detected in the blood, urine, and even on your breath. So that is how, when you get pulled over, they can do a breath test. They can ask for blood, and it can also be found in your urine. So when we talk about blood alcohol, so this is males, and if you look down the side, it says number of drinks. Across the top is body weight in pounds, and it talks about estimated amount of alcohol, or BAC, when you look at pounds. So say you're 160-pound male and you've had 3 drinks. You're not quite at the legal limit, but you're pushing it. And if you can see down at the bottom, those color waves, so that means driving skills significantly affected in that tan area. Of course, across the top is sort of the blue, only safe driving limit is 0. And that's just, we would like for people to not drink and drive. And impairment begins in the white, so that 0.03, 0.02 threshold. Driving skills start to be significantly affected in the tan, and then the gold is legally intoxicated, and then that little corner down there, kind of the coral color, is possible death, and that is when your body starts to can no longer get rid of that alcohol. And in the last slide, I talked about that an ounce an hour. I'm also going to talk about here in a couple slides about what an actual standard drink is. And so that also makes people think about how much they're having to drink. And, they say they had a drink, but if you had a 20-ounce beer, that is more than a drink. And so I'll get to that a little bit too. But so you can see 160-pound male, he has 3 drinks. He's still okay. He's not quite at the legal limit. You go have a couple more, you go down, that's a 0.12. You're in that legally intoxicated area. And then if we go over to females, same chart, it's just a little bit different. And alcohol, people will say, well, I have a really high tolerance. You might have a high tolerance, but if you give blood, or if they do a breathalyzer, these are the numbers that you're still going to pop. It doesn't matter what your tolerance is. Your blood alcohol content is based on this science. And when it talks about eliminating an ounce an hour, that's if you're not adding another drink. And so your body really processes, they suggest a drink an hour. But if you're drinking more than a drink an hour, it's harder for your body to keep up and process that alcohol. And so then your BAC can grow exponentially because you're not letting your body process it. It's just kind of adding it on. So you can see here, a 140-pound female, has 2 drinks. They're almost at the legal limit. You have 3 drinks, and you're at a 0.10, which is past the legal limit. You're legally intoxicated. You would get a DUI. So when I talk about drinks and what that looks like, this is what we're looking at. So a standard drink is 12 ounces of beer, 5 ounces of wine, higher level, like it says sherry's or port, some of those higher level is 18% alcohol, is only 3 ounces. And then shot, like hard liquor, is 1.5 ounces. So that's an actual shot glass, measures out to 1.5 ounces. And so if you're at a bar that doesn't measure, or you have a double tall, or so that's actually 2 drinks. So if you're somebody that orders double talls, you're actually drinking 2 drinks in one setting. And so it's just something to think about. Like a pint is actually typically more than 12 ounces. And just a lot of times we think of, well, I ordered a drink at a bar. A lot of times they don't always follow the standard drink. And so it's something to think about. I like this one I used for a presentation with college students. And I think it's kind of funny that jungle juice is on here, which is typically way more alcohol than what we need. But it also shows the red Solo cup. So if you are having, a party and you are mixing drinks for people and you're using Solo cups, those measurements on a Solo cup are actually ounce measurements. And so, but if you fill it all the way to the top, you're giving them more than a beer. If you fill a shot past that first little line, that's more than a standard drink. And then for wine, it's that second line there. And a lot of people don't realize that those are actually made for measuring. But I don't think many people think of that or use it for that. So these are standard drinks. And also, like if you think of a cocktail, like a martini, you're typically have a couple kinds of alcohol in there. So you may think of it as one drink, but most of the time there's 2 kinds of alcohol, and most of the time they're both a 1.5 ounce pour. And so you're actually getting 2 drinks in one setting. So just something to think about. We always say, I work with law enforcement on things, and they say, well, the person said they had a drink, and then you start asking, well, what did you drink? And it's typically not a standard drink. So talk a little bit about the brain and what alcohol does to the brain. So here's the areas of the brain that are affected by alcohol. You can see the different areas of the brain and where it takes effect. So our prefrontal cortex. So when you think about a brain for youth, that prefrontal cortex actually is not fully developed until they're 25. So when we talk about underage drinking, we talk a lot about the brain, and that prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until they're 25. And it's almost like you're pouring alcohol over a Jell-O mold. It eats the brain almost faster because it is more, it's not firm, it's not fully developed. And so when we talk about drinking underage, that's one of the biggest things, is that we do know a lot of the effect on the brain, but since the brain isn't fully functioning or fully developed, what are we losing in our young people that are drinking, especially, binge drinking and heavy drinking. So this is the effects of the brain. And as you can see, alcohol affects all of it. All the way around, your brain is affected by alcohol. And just some short-term and long-term, and some of these just feel like common sense, but sometimes there's things that we just don't think about. So the short-term is mood swings, slow reflexes, decreased coordination, vomiting, blackouts, slurred speech, issues with concentration, distorted vision and hearing, increased blood pressure, changes in body temperature, lower inhibitions. So when you think of the short term, those are obviously things that we don't want people to be displaying those symptoms when they're driving. But it shows that, especially for our young people, some of those things, lowered inhibitions, things like that, it's a scary thought when you think of it with our young people especially. But we also, and then you think about I hear from a lot of young people in their 20s that those mood swings for some last a couple days, or they have anxiety with their hangover the next day, and anxiety when they drink, because if they already have some anxiety and they add alcohol to it, sometimes there's some anxiety, but especially the next day, I hear from a lot of 20-somethings that they call it hangxiety, because they sometimes maybe don't remember or aren't sure what they did, and then some people just talk about how they just don't feel good and it makes their heart race the next day. So there's lots of, I think, short term, and I think everybody's different for sure. And then long term, liver disease, malnutrition, depression, stroke, high blood pressure, permanent brain damage, ulcers, alcoholic hepatitis, different kinds of cancer, nerve damage, and trouble keeping up with life's responsibilities are some of the long term. But I think some of the keeping up with life's responsibilities can also go in the short term. We talk a lot about academic success and things like that when it comes to young people. If they're using alcohol on a regular basis, or even, on a not so regular basis, it could affect their academics or their athletics as well. And then another piece of it that we definitely, are starting to talk more about is mental health disorders that commonly occur. Whether it's alcohol is the cause or alcohol is how people are dealing with it. There could be, and this was just a simple one that I found to just show that overall. But when we think about, mental health and maybe trauma in people's lives, a lot of people use alcohol to self-medicate, to deal with a tough day, to deal with traumas in their life. But as we know, it really does just add to it. It really doesn't take away the problem. The next day you still have the same problem, or the same feelings of trauma. But we do find that a lot of mental health disorders also have addiction, and these are the common ones that are just proven that sometimes these are co-occurring with mental health and addiction. And then but they also use the substances. So it's not just alcohol, it's a range of substances, and a lot of times it is just a way of coping, but one doesn't help the other when we think of it that way. And then here's just I thought this was a great list of 10 good mental health reasons not to drink. Alcohol interferes with the process of the memory and new learning. And so especially with young people, like I said, their brain isn't fully developed. So how do we know that it's not affecting their ability or what they could be, or what their academics could be? It interferes with normal sleep, which in turn affects energy, mood, anxiety. Some people talking about that anxiety. A lot of people I know, or youth that we have talked to, especially college age, say, I just don't sleep well. I think I do because I pass out, but I don't wake up rested. I feel anxious when I wake up. It's probably because you're not really getting good sleep, so you're not getting good energy. Alcohol is a direct central nervous system depressant that interferes with mood stability and promotes depression. And when you talk about the central nervous system, in that oral part on the chart that we saw, when your central nervous system can't take on any more alcohol, it starts to shut down, and that's when you see classic alcohol poisoning, and that can lead to death if your body doesn't always know how to get rid of it, and if it has suppressed your central nervous system so far, it can stop your breathing. It can eventually stop your brain from working, and so another good reason not to use or overuse alcohol. While alcohol may provide short-term relief when you're anxious, drinking leads to rebound anxiety, which makes matters worse. Drinking tends to make us more impulsive, so those lowered inhibitions. The choices we make when we are disinhibited by alcohol are often regrettable, which leads to shame and increases anxiety and depression. Alcohol tends to increase our inhibitions about using other substances. We've always talked about alcohol sort of as that gateway. Most people don't go to a party and start with hard drugs. It might be, or even, marijuana. They might go to a party and be drinking. Somebody's passing something around, and they're more willing to try things when their inhibitions are low. And so, a lot of times we see alcohol sort of as that gateway. I think our gateway for our youth now is vaping. We don't see alcohol as much of the gateway as we do some other things now, but I think those inhibitions being lowered is the gateway ultimately. Alcohol interferes with therapeutic effects of prescribed meds. So if you are on meds, you have to think about what alcohol does to any of your meds, whether it's for mental health or for health reasons. alcohol does interact with medications differently. In addition, alcohol may be dangerous in combination with other medications. Some, it can be dangerous, and it will say on the bottle, do not drink alcohol. Alcohol may be triggering of past traumatic experiences that involved alcohol, leading to greater distress, increased shame, depression, and anxiety. So like I was saying, you might feel like you're tamping down those feelings, or you're just trying to drink to forget, but ultimately it's not out of your brain, and sometimes alcohol can just be even more triggering for those past traumatic things. And here's some resources, just some really great sites. This one is responsibility.org. It really talks about responsible drinking, what we're looking at for how many drinks are safe for your health, for your mental health. The Why We Talk, if you've followed the Lunch and Learn series, I covered the Why We Talk website a while ago, and it has all kinds of resources. It's really targeted for parents, giving them resources to talk to their young people about alcohol, but not just alcohol and drugs, tobacco, suicide, mental health. So it's a really great website that is Wyoming based. It is a statewide website created by, again, by WASCOP, which is our Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. So that one's a really great website. There's lots of downloadable conversation starters for parents to use with their youth, or teachers to use with youth. Anybody that is in a place that has access to youth, there's some really great resources on that website. Healthline is just, this one really, I liked this one because it really does talk about the health of your body. It went even deeper into the brain and the body overall, about how alcohol affects your body. This one is WASCOP, so this is the Alcohol and Crime in Wyoming, and that website will take you to all of the past surveys. There's a supplemental that shows surveys over the years, and so that's a great resource. Again, it's all Wyoming data collected here in Wyoming by our law enforcement. CDC is a really great website for anything. Honestly, if you're looking for data for anything, they have not only national data, but they have statewide data. They have fact sheets that you can print on just about anything. Sometimes our Wyoming data for youth may not be included in the CDC website because we do not participate in a national survey. It's the, just blanked but it's a national survey, so we do our own, the prevention needs assessment in our schools. And then there's a national survey that we used to also do in the schools, and we don't do that one anymore. But so that one, this CDC site is transportation, so it really talks about impaired driving. This one is alcohol. Like I said, if you are looking for information on anything around just health and wellness and overall well-being, the CDC has a lot of good links to things, and then lots of fact sheets. And then the last one was just something I stumbled upon that really talks a lot about alcohol and mental health, and that is where I got the mental health information. There is starting to be a lot more information on mental health and alcohol and what it does to your overall well-being. And that was, in a nutshell. I think I went through it pretty fast, but if anybody has questions, or if you want me to click on any of those websites, please let me know. Again, my name is Tracy Young, and this is my email. You can always reach out to me with questions. We do have monthly meetings of the Carbon County Prevention Network. We meet the first Monday of every month from 12 to 2 in Rollins at the Higher Ed Center, and then from 4 to 5 in Saratoga at the Community Center. So we have 2 meetings in Carbon County where we hope the community will come and talk to us about their concerns when it comes to alcohol, tobacco, opioids, other drugs, and suicide.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
Yeah.
That's great. And as always, we will be back next month on the second Tuesday. Make sure to follow our page and join us on the next presentation.
Yeah, and next month I'll talk about all of the suicide prevention trainings that are available in Carbon County, and we'll have a schedule of upcoming suicide prevention trainings.
Great. Awesome.